If you know anything about Zimbabwe, you probably consider it a what not to do guide on how to run a country. But it wasn't always like that. It was the only country during British decolonisation whose leaders decided to say no, and instead declare their own independence as Rhodesia. It would end up with black leaders and a black party running the country. Every nation to the north of them had been overtaken by some uniquely insane black African dictator. These people, who now made up about 5% of the population of Rhodesia, wanted to maintain the country they had built and the traditions it had, especially considering that Rhodesia at this point had one of the best quality of life of any African nation. So, I wanted to go and see what remains of that history. Never has gotten better, nothing. The only thing they can show for it is that now, in the Bulawayo Club for example, blacks are now allowed in, and so are women.
So the toilet came with skid marks. I think they're permanent on there. That wasn't me, trust me.
That's the advertisement.
Nothing. 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 And yes. Big if true.
Okay, what the is this? Is that what your toilet paper's meant to go?
I think so, yes.
You know when you're on the toilet and you have the brick, so you can play the brick.
Why not?
Hello. How are you?
Good, nice to meet you.
So she's older, and then comes him, and then me, and then there's a baby who is in Australia. The last one. Hi, mommy. Hello.
In Salisbury, there were stores which we were not allowed to step in. They were for the white people only.
There were some white people that were very nice to us, but the majority of them were not nice to us.
How bad the system of apartheid, of racial segregation was, you could never gloss over that. You
Yes,
can't.
yes.
It's the wrong thing. It's dehumanizing. I was born and bred in Rhodesia myself, and obviously being a teen, at the time, the things that I remember and quite vividly about Rhodesia, unfortunately for me, they're all nice things. We lived in town, which was so clean.
Mm-hmm.
We lived in you could go to a local clinic which would compare and beat a full referral hospital like Paris today, out in the townships, right?
In Zengeza, to be specific.
Everything, there was order. Okay, there was order, refuse collection, water, clean water, everything, right?
Lights that didn't go.
Or lights which didn't go, everything was really quite good. Football, sports.
Or milk at your doorstep.
Yes,
You
milk.
forgot.
Yeah. So it's like...
So as black people, you'd have access to all that?
Yeah,
Oh, yes.
milk at
Oh,
our
yes.
doorstep.
The only thing that was there in Rhodesia was the sort of racial segregation that was there. Obviously, because that one would have hurt my parents and the elder siblings who would have sort of like, bore the brunt of that. But growing up, in that
As
area, as a child, into my teens, everything was really what we can only dream of now.
In Salisbury, there were stores which we were not allowed to step in. they were for the white people only. That's one point. And ndizvo zvinorakidza kuti vanga vasingatide varungu. Kana mahotels aripo aibvumirwa kunzi munhu mutema apinde, asi unenge uine mari yako hauende muhotera uchienda kunokumbira, unoenda kunotenga asi unzi haupinde. Zvanga zvakaipa. Iye zvino tiri kwavo tiri kungopindidzana nekuti vanoda mari. Vanoda mari kupinda munhu. Havazivi kuti munhu kunyange dai ari munhu mutema anogona kuve mupfumi kana kuti murombo. Handiti? Zvinhu ndo zvakaita Rhodesia. Tinenge tichida kuti vaite zvokuti vatibatsire kana vanhu muri pamwe chete vanofanira kutiudzawo kuti wevakawo kwavo. Kwete kuti kanda kure. Iyo iri nyika yedu. Ndo zvakaipira Rhodesia izvozvo. Chakanaka chevarungu ndechekuti they were very smart.
Smart in terms of brain here kana utsanana wao.
Utsanana.
Vanga vakarongeka.
Chaizvo. Aida kukopa waitoita utsanana chaiyo.
Ko zvanga zvakaipa.
Izvozvo zvokuti munhu akasungwa anotorwa semhuka. Ini ndiri kuti ndakasvika kuAustralia, ndakasvika kuCanada. Handina kumboona vanhu vachibatwa sezvaiitwa vanhu vemuno vakasungwa. Kana achitaura izvozvo zvokuti hamugoni kuchengeta nyika yenyu, ari munhu anondiadvhaisa kuti chengetai makadai. Ndinomuda.
Ko kana asina advice yaari kupa, ari kungotaura chete.
Ari kukanganisa. Nokuti haungatibuda mumba mako ndipindei.
Fair enough.
This is the conundrum. This is really the irony of it all now, that when we are talking about the way things are now, it hurts the elder people when they hear me talk like this, because they will think, you know what, you are ungrateful.
Yes.
I mean, I like to believe I'm a Rastafarian. I believe in Pan-Africanism and everything that goes with it.
Can I just chime in a little bit?
Yes, please.
Please don't forget to mention your father was a political activist.
You know, my name is Masango, which means from the forest, because my father was actually incarcerated at Gonakzingwa. Wow. Yeah, he's one of the very early, first people with to fight against this, black consciousness and everything that goes with it. Yes. So
for him to speak like that.
So for me to speak like this, some people will think, it's ungrateful. But I'm only saying what I know. And what I know is that in Rhodesia, life was really, 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 really good, because
for the
it
children.
was for the children. I can even imagine even for the adults, because the point is, Rhodesia is almost like, to me, because now I'm living in England, I can almost see the flip side. In England, if you can work and you're not lazy, right, you can make it, right. In Zimbabwe, in Rhodesia, it was kind of similar. If you got a job, you could still do, you could work and earn a salary, Obviously, some
we were
people-
kept at a certain.
At a
they
certain
couldn't
Yeah, there's
go
a ceiling.
There's a
Yeah.
ceiling. So there is a ceiling there.
Because the salaries reflected that.
But
the
even
salaries
if
for the ones
you
for
could
the-
talk of the proverbial from rags to riches stories, they related to Rhodesia a lot more than they do.
Oh,
in
and we had
Zimbabwe.
the lotto then.
Yeah, because in Rhodesia you had people who could grow tomatoes and tell you a story that I became a prominent businessman. I started humbly like that because the money was there. Don't forget that the economy was so strong in Rhodesia. Even though Rhodesia was under sanctions, it was so strong that the Rhodesian dollar used to be almost at par, if not better than the pound.
Yeah.
Because I do recall, because I do recall my first time going to England. Now, in independent Zimbabwe, my money would go so far. And I remember when I got into London, and I had my own money in my pocket, and I was really like, I mean, holding my own there. I had so much money that even immigration, was like, are you telling the truth that you actually earned so much money? You know, so that's what it was. But obviously, growing up, I can understand, you know, the how bad the system of apartheid, of racial segregation was. It can't, you could never gloss over that. You
Yes,
can't.
yes.
It's the wrong thing. It's dehumanizing.
Yes.
So you take away that bit, you know, we're still good. Yeah, take away that bit, Rhodesia was still far ahead.
I'm dying to say something.
You know, jump in.
They said dogs on those people with that had gone to ask for help. This is after hours. What are you doing here? My wife, the dogs on them. And they ended up bringing hurt people plus a pregnant person in a wheelbarrow after the 80s. And I thought to myself, what used to happen before independence if this can happen?
Now, after independence.
So, and I always tell people that after land grabs and everything, a part of me was happy, another part of me wasn't.
It's a conundrum. Yeah?
Because they were feeding the nation, yes, but they were literally cruel. But I'm not saying all of them. There were some white people that were very nice to us, but the majority of them were not nice to us.
Which is like Tongogara says, it's the
Where you just go like, if they could do that, and this is just one of the stories, there are plenty of evil stories that used to happen in those farms. And another thing, there was a lot of tuberculosis that we dealt with at the clinic. Reason being, I don't know if you have goat sheds in your area, you know, where you build these little round things for the goats.
the goat pens.
That's where these people that worked there used to live in. And they were one next to another, and they had thatched roofs. They were living in mansions as the white owner of the farm, but these workers were living in goat sheds.
The response that Black Africans were living in uncivilized conditions anyway.
Yeah.
The development that's here is what we built, as in we the Rhodesians or we the white. So why do you start complaining and why do you start feeling entitled to something we built
I
when
have
you
a
were
reason.
already living in uncivilized conditions?
Oh, my
So they
response
feel
to
like
that.
it's not
Oh,
an
let
issue.
me respond to that. First of all, had they never set foot in this country, we would never have known anything. So we would have been happy with what we had. They came here and took us as slaves in our country to build them the roads, the mansions,
Which they
the
wanted
water
themselves.
things, which they wanted to use for themselves. But we did without a salary. Okay, so after that had happened, if you took, like, I remember when you remember the Nehanda drama that they made after independence, they literally enslaved the people and they took their land, because this land in Harare belonged to indigenous people. Okay, so or even in Bulawayo, belonged to the indigenous. So they took them off because it was the fertile land, the nice land that they wanted. And then they took us to places where they called reserves. Sometimes when you look at some of these villages, you can actually see that people seem to not be very keen on developing them.
Right.
The reason is they are reserves. This was not our original. This was not our original. They were reserved for black people.
Right.
They are reserves. Our places, we were taken from them. So only now, because our great-great-grandfathers were put in those reserves, now for us now, the newbies in this thing are calling it home. Only now people are developing it. But we didn't like it. Our grandfathers did not like it because they were reserves.
Right.
So is it a question of ignorance is bliss? You come from the reserves, and you come into Zengeza. For the first time, you see lights and what have you. If you remain in that situation and how good it is to you,
In quotation marks.
yeah, because you've got your milk, you've got everything looks nice, but until you get to see what is happening across the road in the low density. So in other words, ignorance for you is bliss.
I get it.
Isn't
I get it.
You get what I mean?
I get what you mean.
So that's why I said in my opening remark to say,
Yeah.
as a teen, you are only exposed to what, you have got. And what I was exposed to as a teen was great.
Yeah.
I actually, I'm so happy this came up so naturally.
Yeah.
Because I'm working through this thing in my head where I've seen people are unable to separate criticisms of maybe what's not so good right now and racism. I'm saying this from from another side. It's like there are a set of, I don't know if you've seen this video online. I watched it and the comment section is just terrible. It's a conundrum because there are black people who have criticisms of what's maybe not going well, but they also feel entitled to their independence and they want nation building. So it's almost like now it's a
hodgepodge. It's
people
like,
want to push you.
It's a melting pot. It's a melting pot. See, that's the thing. It's generational, isn't it? Yes, most people who don't know what was bad about Rhodesia can't talk about it. You know, all they have seen is they were born free. And this is what freedom is. This is what people fought for, and they can't quite
understand it.
You know, they can't quite understand it. You know, but you've got some white, you know, like politicians now, who, you know, Zimbabweans, and so they become parliamentarians, MPs, what have you. And one of them said, you know what, I'm actually going to run for office. You know, and then people were like, no, we can't be ruled by a white person. And when you ask me, and I'm thinking, you know what, it's not about the color of a man's skin or the color of his eyes that determines, to me, as far as I'm concerned, if you
have a good character.
Yeah, if you are Babylon, I don't want you. I don't want you. Whatever skin color you are, as far as I'm concerned, I just want somebody who can do the job.
Can I just say, the way that I see it, if I could be the devil's advocate here, when we had independence, a lot of white people literally wanted to set us up for failure. By going, I'm talking about the farms because I was posted there. They went and they literally dismantled things over there. Sabotaged us. Even in the cities, for example, if Ian Smith had been somebody that wanted to work with black people, nobody would have gone into the bush to fight for this. We would have been together. They literally wanted us to fail. things are actually getting better. Because I'm looking also at Ghana, for example, and I'm looking at Kenya, and I'm looking at the Gambia, and I'm looking at all these other places.
Is it
People from Gambia, if they came here, at least the ones that I know that came here, they were like, wow. And I'm thinking to myself, so if then those people that had all that in their independence so much earlier than us, and their country is even smaller than ours, they didn't even manage to do what we have done, like in this short space of time.
In just 2-3 years.
So what if this government actually got everybody and they were rallied behind them, regardless of whether you actually like them or not?
Right.
And we rallied, and they actually did it. Because you never know. I'm a Christian, not kind of. I'm a Christian.
Right.
So I want to say that Saul on the road to Damascus was bad, but he ended up being the best person for the job. Just like the white government did the best for themselves.
As black people, we can't wish that the whites were not here. They were here. And they did build this country. So it's a fact. The first part as black people is to accept where we're coming from and who did what in our journey to where we are now. Was there anything good that they did for us? Yes, there was. This. Accept it, right? And actually don't be shy to speak it up on the top of the roof to say, oh yeah, they were bad people about this, but they did good things. So they can be an ex-Rhodey, call them an ex-Rhodey, who are in England, in Australia, and whatever. They are looking into Zimbabwe now with heavy hearts. So when they say what they are saying, I can see the hurt, because nobody is speaking anything good about what their people did anymore. So they can only do it themselves. You understand? So now, we as the majority now, because we've taken our country back, it's like we are changing the street names from what they were, English names. What we're trying to do is to rub off our shadow, as if we can never do it. We are trying to say, let's try and forget that there were people like this. That's our folly. We can't do that. They were here. It's part of our history. Write it for our people to know. Are you with me? You have got your own history. Start to build new streets and name them after those people, so that our history is a wholesome, when you try, when you try to suppress, the work that was done even by your erstwhile enemies, you are distorting history. She narrated quite at length the cruelty of our captors yesteryear, but equally from independence, the cruelty of our own people. I could actually arguably say it's worse than what was happening before, because my father was in detention, right? But I don't think that my father was subjected to the treatment that we see happening when we are free. You understand where I'm coming from, And this is even worse, because if it's being done by you to me, it's worse. I can accept it if it was done by our erstwhile conquerors, because we were a conquered nation. They could do that. They were our enemies, you see. So when we talk about this war thing, and that's where my Rastafarian thing comes in, which is telling me it's not the color of a man's skin. If you can allow yourself to look beyond the color of a man's skin, or of his eyes, and just look at fact as it is, you are going to grow. You are going to grow as a nation, as a family, as an individual, because, you have trained yourself to see what is there before you, you see. So for me, I'm liberated. I like to believe I'm liberated, in the sense that if he says to me, oh yeah, my ancestors built this country, the first thing I'll say, oh yeah, I agree. But when you mix politics and fact, in Rastafarian lingo, it becomes politricks. That's all it becomes. It becomes politics, and I don't deal with that. You see, I don't deal with that. I deal with facts and righteousness and everything that goes through with that. And that's just the way I see it. My country, Zimbabwe, you know, I was so happy when Rose said this could be the dawn of a new era. We're a rainbow nation. If it's a white person who has got the blueprint to do this, let him do it because he wants to do the job in the name of our country. If it's in China,
that one.
right?
Unless it ends to get in trouble. No, I tell you,
Right? Can I just be a devil's advocate and say it's good. It's good to say something, right? Again, I'm under the same spirit of don't look at the color of a man's skin. I will say, the world over, I've been to Canada, I've been to USA, and I've been to Australia. On every continent, in every nation, there is a Chinese influence, right? So in other words, they've become our shadow as well. The only thing we need to do is to manage anybody who comes to work with us. That's it. That's what I would say.
Their civilization turned out to be more superior to the Shaunas and the Baileys, and they also have a rightful claim because
we are all
you're
not
all like invaders
native at some point. We're all invaders.
So that's an interesting way to start off the video.
I think so too.
Because it lays the basis for what's to come, and it insinuates a lot and has a lot of undertones.
In my opinion, I would think that, you know, you can trace amongst these three tribes, okay, the three groups mentioned, the Ndebele, the Shona, the Europeans, you can trace where the Europeans are coming, like the white people or the Rhodesians. In fact, firstly, I've got a problem with the term Rhodesian. Because we're not in Rhodesia anymore. But anyway, some of them still refer to themselves as Rhodes, like this guy would mention. I'm saying the Shonas and the Ndebeles were from Africa. We just came from another part of Africa, right?
So this was basically your continent.
Yeah, it was it the Berlin Conference when they discussed when the Europeans discussed how to shape up Africa, and they parceled it out to themselves. So really, Africa you just used to be one place, right, with different regions, but we didn't have these borders to separate or demarcate us. So you would just, you know, roam around.
Right.
But these guys are clear outsiders. They don't even look
the same.
But
I feel like, you know what, it's now history, and all the, you know, mistakes that have been made on both sides. Now we're in a place where Zimbabwe is like a mixed country. You know, there are white people, there's everyone here. So it's kind of also a bit backward for him to, you know, pull out such a video that seemingly has a lot of like racist undertones. He says that basically Rhodesians their idea was they would eventually allow black governance. Is that what he's saying? Once there was enough educated blacks.
In my opinion, we already had, before the white people came, we already had our own systems that were running, and they were effective. Although they might have had flaws, you know, because we had some intertribal fights and whatnot, but there was still structure of some sort. So
that they didn't see it as civilization. Their civilization was more advanced. So for them, once they've settled Zimbabwe, that's what I'm saying, that's an issue. If they considered themselves more advanced, right?
Okay, fine. So
at what point were they going to give up?
Let's just say they were trying to civilize us, or to say they were waiting for enough blacks to be educated. At what point? And
would
was
they
it
reach
really
to that level?
Exactly, and was that really genuine, given the segregation?
Yeah.
That we're staying,
because you weren't getting the same education.
We're not getting the same education.
The same access to resources.
Yes, it was basically we're basically staying in classes, right?
So if you're an ex-Rhodesian watching, or someone who grew up in Rhodesia and you're probably white from the other side, please feel free to comment and let us know how that was going to work out, if there was still segregation. Was it going to be a parallel state, like with local Zimbabweans separate from whites, because already white people consider themselves, and they were more civilized and had more advanced civilization. So
which they brought.
So how was that gonna work out?
The whites in Rhodesia then refused to allow the blacks to rule, although the pressure was at that time that everyone was now supposed to govern, to have the fair thing.
But was the issue that the blacks must rule, or was it that they should have a voice? Because the problem was, in Rhodesia, the blacks did not have a voice. So were you guys asking for a voice, or were you asking that the whites be pushed out completely? What did a new Rhodesia look like for blacks? Was it ruling side by side with the educated blacks? What did that look like?
I think it was going. The feeling was, or the sentiment was, everyone should get a say, right? So democracy says the one who gets most votes gets to lead the country, no matter who it is. So I guess
I guess the Rhodesians' fear would be that
right.
Black people would then just vote for a black person,
for a black
despite
person
of competence.
Exactly, and because of the treatment that they'd enacted on the people.
But exactly, because that's the other point. It's not just about competence. I think the Rhodesians set themselves up for failure. They had fear of failure at that point, because if you treated the masses terribly for so long, then they wouldn't vote for you, right?
Yeah, they were
But if they treated
they
them
anticipated retribution, I guess, in this
maybe
in this.
But would you say Rhodesia would have had a better outcome if they had treated the blacks better?
I think it was going to be better, right?
Do you think the blacks would have entrusted them with continued leadership?
If they had been fair, if they had been treating everyone equal, and if they had been treating everyone in a fair way, I guess so. I guess they'd have had a fair chance. But because of the mistreatment they enacted on the people, I don't see how that was going to be possible.
Right.
The black masses were obviously going to vote for one of their own, who would push their agendas to say, finally we have a voice,